Hi, Rob.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Hi, Rob.
Good evening, everyone.
I saw Rob Mann a little while ago. I don't see him on now, though. Oh, there he is. I'll take it back.
I'm here. I just muted.
Is Amy on?
Right here.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Good. Are you watching the door for us?
I am. I did it. I did enable the waiting room feature.
Perfect.
So far, everybody that's entered the meeting have names that I recognize. So
There was a little delay when I came in, only 2 or 3 seconds, but I said, I think maybe I was let in by someone I know. Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, looks like all the members of the Board of Finance are here. I see Steve, I heard Rob Mann, I see Rhonda, I see Rob Wurge, I see Jim. And it's now 7:03 p.m., so we'll call this meeting to order, and the record will show that all 6 members of the Board of Finance are present. For correspondence, since we last met, we received a fire marshal memo, draft copy, front cover of the 2019 to 20 annual report. Fire marshal fee schedule, inspections and permits, library services overview presentation. I feel like maybe there's something else that we received, or do we have it all? Was there anything that came in like just in the last 24 hours before this agenda was posted?
Aaron, this is Orla. There is another correspondence from Jamie regarding some comparisons with other towns.
Great, thank you.
That came in either
Yep.
yesterday.
There's a lot came in the last like 2 to 3 days, so
Yeah.
I figured I was missing something. So thank you. We'll have the record show that that came in as well.
And there was another one, but I can't remember what it was.
Was it from
We can just
Rini?
maybe I can't remember.
Right, that's they come in kind of quick.
There
Yeah.
was
Well, we
a fire department rebate program, and then the one about the fire marshals in the neighboring towns, as far as how much revenue is generated by them, and basically most of these towns don't charge any fees.
Yeah, I think that was the most recent correspondence. I'll check the emails afterwards anyway, and I'll check in with Dottie. If there's any, we can add them to next week.
Yeah, I don't see any additional ones.
Okay.
And yeah, the ones I do remember were the fire marshal ones, because Jamie gave us 2 or 3 different ones.
Yeah. They all start to blend together after a while. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then we'll move on to citizens' comments. If any citizen has a comment, they're welcome to share at this time. We ask that you keep it to 3 minutes. And the way that you share comments is you can either let us know, like unmute yourself and let us know that you have comments you want to share. Or you can say into the chat box, please recognize me. I would like to speak. So if anyone has any comments, any citizen, a resident of Thompson has any comments at this time, they're certainly welcome to let us know. All right. So then we move on to item 4, which is Board of Finance discussion about the proposed cover for the 2019 to 20 annual report. I figured I'd put this on item 4 before the budget workshop because then we would be discussing this now instead of at 9 p.m. I think Dottie sent around to the 6 of us. It's a proposed cover for the annual report, and it's basically it's the new Thompson logo.
I like it.
I do too.
I like it.
I do as well. Consistency, important.
Yep, looks
Yeah.
very nice.
I don't know if we need to make a motion and have a vote on this or not, but it's probably better to just use the belt and suspenders approach, which is just to go ahead and make a motion and vote on it. Seems pretty simple. I'll make a motion that we adopt the proposed cover that Dottie sent to us, which prominently features the new Thompson logo as the cover page for our annual report. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Jim's got the second. All in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? So this one carries 6-0, and so we'll move on to budget workshop. I know when we finished last week, we were on the fire departments. Orla notified me today that I guess there is a fire association meeting going on this evening until what, 8 o'clock or something?
Yeah, that's right.
And so some of the chiefs, or all of the chiefs, I think.
All
would
of them,
be-
yeah,
All of them would be at that meeting.
correct.
So we can continue discussing fire departments if we wish, knowing that we wouldn't get any testimony from fire chiefs until 8 o'clock, or we can skip it and come back when they're available.
I see
Karen?
Chief Sharp is.
I was
on
gonna
the call.
say, a good portion of the chiefs are here.
Oh, they are.
I saw Chief John Sharp. I did see Matt Whipple. I saw Ron
Great.
Fournier. I believe I saw Matt Grauer. Yes. So Chief Grauer.
That's great. Maybe they're meeting, maybe they changed their meeting.
So I don't remember within the fire department's budget, just exactly, what comments we left off with.
Amy, can you just give me the rights to share? And I can share the document.
Yes, sorry about that.
Oh,
Gotta
no problem.
remember- Gotta remember to do that at the beginning of the meeting.
Don't worry.
Aaron, I had commented right at the end that while it looked like a reduction
good.
across the board,
Thank you.
we're actually shifting some of the costs to another bucket.
Yes.
But I just thought it would be important to normalize that 19,600 reduction is, take the 75,000 that's been moved over, it's more like a $55,000 increase year over year. Not saying it's a good increase or a bad increase, just the facts that it's
Yes.
actually up when you normalize it for that move. I think that's where we ended, right around there.
I think you're right. Does anyone have any questions for the fire chiefs?
I had a question regarding the hydrants. Just the increase there looked fairly substantial year over year. Just interested in what's driving that up.
Actually, that's interesting because John Rice mentioned it last week, and John Sharp and I have had many discussions this week regarding Connecticut Water and those hydrants. We are seeing a 5% increase in price, but it's based on a dollar amount, a set dollar amount, and it's per, John, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's per foot of the pipe, of the water piping, correct? This I'm addressing to John Sharp.
Maybe he's muted.
That's okay. But I did communicate I sent an email out to the representative at Connecticut Water for Amy and I to have a discussion with them and negotiate, because the price that they're proposing is, I actually have the paperwork in front of me, it's $84,000 approximately, which is a little bit less anyway than the 88, but either way, it's not a per usage charge. It's a set fixed amount per month. And as I say, it increases every year by at least 5%. But based on what our analysis of the paperwork that was provided to us, it does appear to look like we get a set rate per hydrant, and we have 41 hydrants, and then we get charged a per foot charge of the water piping. So,
Orla, did you say the latest proposal is 84,900? Did I understand you correctly?
84,000, because we didn't have the communication from Connecticut Water when we did the provisional review of the budget. So that's why I put in 88,000, approximately 3% increase in what our estimate is for this year. But most likely our estimate for this year is not going to be 85. So I guess they did renegotiate part of the rate after our budget last year. So anyway, in relation to fiscal 2022, because that's the most important here, it's approximately 84,000. So either way, we're going to change it, but I don't necessarily propose we change it now. I propose we change it when Amy and I have a discussion with Connecticut Water and see if we can bring it down any better.
Well, if I understand this correctly, the estimate for 21 is 85, and that's subject to some change. And the proposal for this coming fiscal year is basically the same, 84,900?
About 84,000. It's the dollar amount that's being presented to us is 83,890 something.
So
I'm going to
the same basically as this year's estimate. Is that correct? Or are you actually a little bit lower?
Somewhat, but remember, this year's estimate was based on information that I didn't have for fiscal 22. So either way, most likely estimate 21 is going to change, but I think what's most important here is what we're going to end up paying for fiscal 22.
Thank you.
Okay.
Orla? So you're saying for this one, we're at this point, it's possible that it's going to be around 85,000 for 2022. Is that what you just basically
said? No, it's
said?
approximately 84,000 if we can't
84.
negotiate, bring it down any lower.
So can we highlight this one or add it to the list of things?
I do have it highlighted, Rhonda. Yeah, there's a box around it right now, and I've already added it to my list so I can make sure Dottie's aware of it by the end of the meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Then the other item, Orla, was around the abatement doc that came out, showed about 43,000. We had budgeted 35 last year. We increased it from 1,000 to 1,500 mid-year. So this year's estimate, I believe, if that document's correct, is 43 versus.
So we can.
50. So do we still need to go to 60 if our current year is 43, or is 43 more realistic? Because that 25 is a big driver here.
No, I agree. So now that we have a more realistic number for fiscal 21, 50 is purely based on our estimates before Rainey does his calculation.
Yep.
So do keep in mind, there's one which wasn't brought to your attention last week. My understanding is when the town meeting passed the change in the fire abatement increase from 1,000 to 1,500, there's also an increase to 2,000 in fiscal 22. At least that's my understanding. So that justifies the increase of the 10,000 that was proposed by the Board of Selectmen. So it's definitely worth keeping an eye, and I'll do a quick analysis either in the meeting or after the meeting to get a more realistic, but it doesn't sound like we need 60,000. Not if we know that our actual for fiscal 21 is going to be less than 50.
Sorry, Orla, could you back up 2,000? I don't remember any discussion around 2,000. The discussion was that we'd go from 1,000 to 1,500. The firefighters are sadly paying tax on tax, so they're netting something less than 1,500. And we were going to move it to an exemption so that they get the full 1,500, which would be the equivalent of another nice bump if they don't have to pay tax on it.
So as I say, I don't have
2,000.
So I don't have the wording from the town meeting, but that information was passed on to me by one of the fire departments. I didn't have it in front of me, but that would make sense as to why we initially were proposing the 60,000. So if we're going to switch to an exemption, it's hard to know what we're going to end up with. We may possibly be best to inflate the estimated number for fiscal 21 But there is likely to be an increase regardless, because I think I mentioned to you guys last week, I see there's a couple of things why, we're starting to have additional members join the fire departments who, some of them are going to end up to have tax liability, some are not, but also in relation to individuals who may not necessarily have may have a backlog of taxes. So therefore, they wouldn't be eligible for the abatement, but they may be current and not paying the current year's taxes. So I'm just saying, I don't want to make things more complex than they need to be, but it's likely that we will have an increase on that 43,000 that we currently are proposing for the fiscal 21 in 22 with the tax exemption. So, but at this stage, I don't think we need 60. So I will take a look at those numbers and come back to you guys with a better one by next week.
But just in general, why is this an expense as opposed to simply a reduction of income?
So it was all up in the air and nothing's been passed as yet. So I was a little bit reluctant to take it out of this line item until such time as it becomes more definite. This ends up being settled by the time, this budget gets put into place, then it'll be moved around. But at the moment, I'm leaving it here, also as a reminder as to the work that has to be done on this particular issue.
If it is adopted as an exemption, this will disappear. Is that correct?
Yeah, it'll be moved to a different line item. It'll be moved into the revenue.
A reduction of the revenue is what it boils down to.
Yeah. It's an adjustment to the revenue.
It's net zero, Steve. I mean, it's left pocket, right pocket. So at the end of the day, it's the same.
Just an accounting entry, but it is right to move it eventually.
Thank you, Orla.
Mm-hmm. No problem. So we leave boxes around the fire hydrant and we leave boxes around the abatement. And I can come back to you guys with final numbers next week, and we can get those numbers settled by the next week's meeting.
Any questions for the fire marshals, for the fire chiefs while they're here with us?
Well, I guess the obvious question is they've asked for substantially more than is being proposed. Do they have a comment about that?
If I may, John Sharp.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Aaron. Obviously, my budgets are a little bit more on a year-to-year basis. I put in for 80,000 on my budget package. My annual cost of running the firehouse for a year is somewhere between 73 to 75. I put in for 80. There's a few updates that we need to do or would like to do. Unfortunately, if it stays at 65, we're not going to be able to do those. So, the other thing that I would like to bring to the board too is for the last few years, we've also been putting in capital expense reports. And we've yet to hear anything in regards to those. I didn't know if those were ever brought to the Board of Finance as well. But, we also, all fire departments put in, capital expense reports for what we believe needs to be itemized over, a 10-year plan. But again, those haven't been brought to light either. I don't know where we stand on that either.
I believe I did send the fire department budget to the Board of Finance at the beginning of the budget season, correct? Does anyone remember getting an email? If not, I'll send you the PowerPoint straight after this, but I sent it.
Again, Amy, not to put you on the spot or anything, but the Board of Selectmen suggesting 65,000, which is lower than the departments had requested. Is there, I understand why they all might be the same. I appreciate that, but I wondered if there was some reason why it's 65 versus, any other number in particular. In all honesty, I don't have a particular number in my mind, but I wondered why you picked 65.
Well, 65, certainly, obviously, we know that the fire departments are you know, they have a difficult time with achieving their capital goals. However, the funding that we provided last year seems to have adequately equipped them. So we felt a modest increase to continue that increase year after year. Was how
Okay,
we
just wondering what there was, you know, what the thinking was. I appreciate that very much.
nothing more specific than that.
Thank you.
And honestly, thinking about again what the town will bear, etc. So
Yeah, it's what, roughly a 5% increase over the current year. So
Any other discussion on fire departments while we have our chiefs here? Any other questions for our chiefs while they're with us?
I might just ask, it was brought up by Chief Sharp, Orla, is the, and I just don't have it in front of me, in the capital budget, do we have any fire department requests in the capital side? I just don't remember. in all honesty.
No, we don't. The only thing we do have is in the transfer fund is the $75,000.
Understand that. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So the capital requests from the departments are not reflected in the proposal anywhere?
No.
If I may, once more for the board,
Here, John.
if somebody could explain to me on the ambulance side, the 75,000 transfer fund, how that's going to operate.
Amy, do you want to talk on behalf of the Board of Selectmen on that?
Well, I think Chief Sharp, who I just met with this afternoon, is specifically asking how the transfer fund process works.
Okay.
As far as requesting funds, at least that's what I guess.
Correct.
Well, typically how it works is we, the funds are made available to, in this case, it would be community ambulance. And they would, I guess it would be determined by the Board of Finance whether it would be necessary to come back. But typically the transfer fund enables capital improvement projects. So for example, if you knew you had to spend 25,000 on X, you would come to the Board of Selectmen, or sorry, Board of Finance, bring it to their attention, and we would pay those bills directly, as opposed to, say, reimbursing you, or as opposed to the community ambulance paying them. It's undetermined as how we're going to do this here, and I that's why I suggested going back to the Board of Selectmen, how they envisioned it when they voted on it.
And one last question: what about our fixed expenses for the ambulance side? How is that is that also going to be coming out of that so-called transfer fund?
As I say, that's not determined at the moment.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? So the 75,000 is all the money to support the ambulance that we have in this budget. Is that correct?
That's what was proposed, correct?
Okay. And I guess my question would be for the Board of Selectmen regarding the increase of $3,000 when they looked at the presentation from the fire departments. Would that extra $3,000 be able to enable them to get any of those capital expenses that they had in their budget?
Rhonda, to answer your question, in order for these departments to adequately be funded to move forward with all of their capital projects, the town is going to have to step up and provide a lot more funding. And I just don't know that the town's able to bear that amongst the 5 departments that need updating.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone know what since it's not in the proposal here, what, at least rough numbers, what the capital requests were for the 5 departments?
Bear
Even
with
if
me
it's just a
one
rough
second.
number? Maybe,
Um,
you know?
Well, I have the documents here, so bear with me a second. And again, I'm pretty sure I shared it at the beginning of the budget season, but if not, I'll send it to you guys again. Okay.
So Chief Sharp, do you know what your capital request was?
Um,
Or even if it's approximate, just to get a rough idea.
I want to be truthful, the first year was just like anything else, it was a fairly larger sum to try to keep us into some sort of compliancy with some of the mandates. I believe the figure was somewhere around $200,000.
Thank you.
Now, again, we also into that, we still have a building that we need to get adequately taken care of. So that was part of it. There was a furnace issue, which we've got about 25 years on, that's starting to see its age. We also have a roof on the existing building. There's also firefighting turnout gear that still has to be somewhat updated. We just purchased 5 sets that we took out of some of our savings. We're looking at truck replacement at some point in time. According to some of the mandates, the first out piece of equipment should not be more than 20 years old. Obviously, we know that that's a very large expenditure as well. But again, we were asked to present that to and work that into our budgets. So we've been doing it for quite some years. And again, I don't know if that'll ever come to fruition. They're very large. There's no doubt about it. The fire service is not cheap by any shape, form, or way. But again, we bring that to light every year.
Thank you. I just want to get a rough approximation of what we're looking at if that had been in here. Thank you.
Yep.
So yeah, John, I have you for year 1 and 2, approximately 200,000 in total. Community ambulance request is $42,000. The East Thompson request, this is what capital request we're talking about, 228. Quinnebog request is $130, and Thompson Hill
I'm sorry, all of it, at 30 or 330?
130.
130,
And
thank
then
you.
Thompson Hill is 361.
So we're looking at $1 million, rough.
Yeah. They're the assets. Oh, I'm sorry, I left out West Thompson. These are the assets that they are looking to purchase. Actually, I didn't get any capital requests from West Thompson. These are the items they are looking to purchase over the next year. And when we send this information, you'll see the list and the breakdown for each department.
So the capital tends to vary. This is Rob Werge. Is there an explanation why the operating budgets are nearly identical?
Rob, were you asking me that?
I'm asking the chiefs, I guess, starting with
Okay.
Chief Sheriff. I understand the capital needs could vary based on the needs and age of the equipment.
Correct.
Seems rather peculiar to me that all of the operating budgets are pegged at the same amount when their territories and the things they do in service are all very different. Why would they all be so close, 48, 55, 62? They keep marching exactly the same. Just curious.
I believe you're looking at the actual that was allocated per year, 48, 55, and 62. My presentation was just around 80,000. Again, for the past 3 or 4 years, my operating costs were somewhere between 73 to 75. Doing a little bit of improvement to in-house whatever, I'm looking at 80,000 as a request. I can't speak for the other chiefs as far as on theirs as far as how they came up with their figures. I can't answer that for you, Rob.
Rob, I know in the past, must have been different from the departments, but the budget has been to be uniform across all 5 of the companies. The right or wrong, that's a different question, but that's why the past years are all identical. We funded them equally.
Rob, too, over the past couple of years, the fire departments have all looked at different options, the Woodstock option, this option, that option, to see how to operate this a little bit more efficiently or smoothly between the departments and share on different things. So I'm not exactly sure where we are with that, but it's been addressed. Where are we with that? Do you know, Mr. Sharp?
If I may, we were going to have our fire advisory committee meeting this evening, but because of the budget meeting and fire departments coming up in the budget, I believe that been postponed. We've made some pretty decent headway in regards to the model that Woodstock had developed about 13 years ago. They've been very forthcoming with us in regards to information. We started, or pretty much have generated a set of bylaws that would be utilized for the funding program. Our next step, which I believe we were going to talk about this evening, would be to get the representatives from Woods Fire Departments and try to develop a very informative meeting where all organizations can come together and kind of put some of the a little more detail into it as far as how it's all going to technically be laid out. But again, because last year being a very unusual year for everybody in the COVID, we weren't able to get a lot of those meetings put together because of situations. We wanted to have it in person so that we could all kind of round table everything and make sure that we're all on the same page. But
So
it is still starting to develop.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if my memory serves me correctly, all the funds would be going into one kitty, so to speak, in that model, and then things would be paid out, or how would that work?
Correct. The way that the model that we're looking at and trying to develop, you're right, it would go into what would be put together as the Thompson Fire Protection Association, where all monies would go into the Protection Association, from fixed expenses to capital improvements. That Fire Protection Association would be presenting a single entity budget, I guess you would call it, to the board or to the selectmen on a year-to-year basis. They would manage the monies, whereas each individual fire department would present bills and so forth to that association, and they would get paid. The association would then also maintain and approve of any capital expenditures for any individual fire department as well. So yes, that entity would be the overseeing governing financial body, I guess you could say.
And if I could, to clarify, John, when you say all monies, do you mean all monies or all town funded monies?
That would be all town budgeted money.
Right.
So I don't know what the bottom line figure was for the fire departments at this point in time, but let's hypothetically the number is 800,000. Now that would be just a one lump sum figure, and then the association would from there manage how that money gets paid out. So again, it would be paid out for fixed expenses for each individual fire department, any capital improvements and so forth. And I believe the way that the Woodstock program works is instead of coming down onto the Orla, if you could just bump up to the individual line items for the fire department. Whereas instead of having each individual listed out as, say, the 911 program, the hydrants, the grant money that each fire department gets, the mandated OSHA testing, the fire insurance, instead of having that all broken out as we do now, the way that the Woodstock system, and again, this is entirely up to the town of Thompson how they want to do it, but there would be just one objective or sub line which states Thompson Fire Protection Association for a single dollar amount, I guess is, but again, that can be tailored as well, depending on how the town wants to do that. We haven't gotten into that detail yet, but Woodstock just uses it as one single line for the Woodstock Fire Protection Association with a lump sum dollar amount. And then that association handles how that money gets expended.
About me and Board of Finance. I guess I have a simple question about how that fire association works. Would grant money also go through the fire association? Would fundraising money, would it all be kittied, or would it still end up being individual for each department? I know this is kind of outside of our agenda here because we're in budget workshop, but how does that work out?
To the best of my knowledge, the way that the monies, if individual fire departments do their own fundraising, that's for their own individual departments. That would stay for the individual departments. When it comes to, we'll call it the grant money that we see here in our budget, or the grants, special fire and ambulance, that's basically where the money would get dispersed amongst all five. If an individual fire department wants to do a fundraiser for their own individual benefit, that would stay within the individual fire department. That would not get dispersed out.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on fire departments?
Just a general comment. I see that the estimate for 21, with the very few exceptions, is this identical to the budget. And I understand, for example, to the grants to the fire departments, that would be the same. But are the other ones actually estimates for 21, or have we just used the budget number? Like I see consulting. I know a couple of years ago we had a consultant and spent some money on that, but for $5,000, and we budgeted 5,000 for the current year. Do we actually expect to spend that? And just curious as to whether the FY21 estimate is a plug-in number or a real estimate.
Steve, it's not consulting. It's a special services software, and it's an approximate dollar amount of $5,000. The others depend. The estimate is a moving target. It's a lot easier to do that when you've got a department head running each department. A little bit harder to do it on the fire department side of things because there isn't exactly a head of department. So yeah, in many cases, this is coming straight from the budget numbers.
Okay.
I did put a box around the software because I do have revised numbers now. That was an estimate in before we got the revised numbers. Jamie was able to get it from the company. So when we're sorting out the others next week, which includes the fire abatement / exemption, the hydrants, I've added the software to the list also.
Any other discussion on fire departments? Any additional questions for our fire chiefs while they're on the call with us? All right, hearing none. Thank you, chiefs. Hearing none, we'll move on to emergency management. Looks pretty quiet there. Unless anybody has any comments, I'll move on to security. Let's-
Perla,
Go ahead.
I noticed you had that circled on the prior page, or is there a reason for that, or?
Security?
Yeah. Circled? Not circled, squared. It's,
Oh, FY22 projected pay has got a square
Oh,
on it.
yeah.
That's because we were unclear. I can remove it now. It was before we had a presentation to the Board of Selectmen with the security staff coordinator, Ben Barber. But I think the determination was to leave it as is for the moment. And certainly, if any of you guys have any questions, we can ask Ben to join us, or we can pass them on to Ben.
No, I was just curious as to why it was boxed off, that's all.
To just give you an idea, we currently have spent, I believe it's $49,000, that's 60.
Any other comments or questions about security? All right, we'll move on to canine control operation.
You have John Smith on the call. She's our new animal control officer. Did you have any questions?
I have a question. It's Rob Wurge.
Go ahead, Rob.
When we decided last year to move from the outsource model, which was very costly, and the belief was it was costly and the services weren't that good, we were going to go to an in-source model. We had capital set aside that was earmarked and slated for this department. So that kind of covered the capital side. And my understanding at the time was that our operating costs would be the same or perhaps lower than the outsource, the expense of the outsource model. But what we're seeing here, if we look through the line items, it's a pretty hefty increase year over year. It's something, did we miss something in the projections, or can someone maybe speak to that? How we went from kind of a net neutral to a sizable increase now.
Amy or John, would you like to talk on that behalf?
Well, I can do my best. This is Amy Sainonge, and certainly Jan can come in as well and explain some of the details. Obviously, we are providing a better service than what we were getting from NECOG. There were a couple things that maybe we didn't think of, such as the cell phone, internet camera systems, things like that. You'll notice that line item. Again, did I know what the projections? These are really just projections because we haven't had a full year of having the facility open. So projections, and pardon me, I left all my paperwork at the office, which was silly of me. And now I have to try to read off the screen, which is not working for me very well. Again, we're guesstimating on what the heating cost will be. We've made some adjustments For like vet services.
We have a canine wants to interrupt.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Oh, geez.
So, yeah, this is just our best guesstimate based on being open for the last couple months. So yes, Rob, maybe our projections were off, but I feel confident that this is a much better service for our town.
I would agree with you, Amy. Just in relation to this, John and I went through this budget many times because it's hard to do something when the historical data is almost 5 years old. So it's a work in progress. Certainly we did our best to try and estimate the fiscal 21. We were always going to be higher on fiscal 21 because our budget was purely based on an estimate cost for contracted services and the continuing services by the prior ACO for just a few hours a week to help with some paperwork. So the estimate for fiscal 21 includes those number of few hours for that individual who's been helping us out. So the estimate for 21 includes two different payroll items. Proposal for 22 only includes the current ACO at her 19 hours a week. So that would certainly help. But yes, it's definitely been, we are seeing it. We did, when Jan and I did some pricing, and she would definitely agree because she did a huge amount of research into how each of these line items how much they were going to cost. And she was able to get a lot of pro bono services and supplies to help provide some of the best service she has, including a huge amount of donations that she's received that she's been able to earmark towards vet services, because vet services are so outrageously expensive. But we're still estimating $1,500 for this month. John, do you want to come in and join me on this?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with everything you're saying. And the vet services was a huge part of it. That's a huge part. And I got to thank Woodstock Vet if they were, thank God they took us on, because I'm in there just about every other day for meds or something for an animal that I've got in there. I don't think it's going to be this bad for 22 and going forward. Once we take care of some of the things that need to be done at the pound, it's a one-time cost and the maintenance just wasn't there. I think that it's going to be fine. I've got so many people that donate time and that want to donate items and food and volunteer work. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't work. Everybody seems to be very happy with the services, even unfortunately the people's dogs I have to take out of their home to quarantine, which I'm currently doing now for rabies. But people are pretty happy with the services. So I think we can make it work. And as soon as we replace some of the items that are faulty down there and get that cost out of the way with the proper maintenance, I don't see it being that bad money-wise.
Can I ask a question, Orla?
Sure.
So the contracted services on line 44, that was what we were paying for NECOG, is that correct?
Well, that's not what we were paying. We put in an estimate. We were trying to keep our dollar amount low on this budget for fiscal 2021. The actual contracted amount that they wanted to charge us was a heck of a lot more than 18,000. Their per capita rate was almost 30,000, if I remember correctly. So my question was, when we actually looked at this last year, they might be coming in right at what we were going to have to pay NECOG anyway. Am I correct in that? Yeah.
I
think, yes, I would agree, not entirely. So for example, if you look at what we're estimating, 36,000, if we paid NECOG, we would have been paying about 30,000, but we wouldn't be getting what we're getting from John. She's done an exceptional job of revamping that pound and getting the service up and running. And, Mary was exceptional in what she did, but having that break and having to take on the services from NECOG created that break for us. And in a very short space of time, John has been able to get that service going and get the communication going and getting the word out in the street that we are revamped and we are ready to accept animals. And I got to hand it to her. She's done a really good job in that respect. So, we're definitely getting more than what we would get. And we're getting a very personal care with somebody who lives locally and does an exceptional job. So yes, you're right. It is a little bit more, but
Well,
I think
it's a
Amy-
little bit, yeah, it's probably,
it's not,
in reality, it's not as big of a gap as it could have. What I'm
Correct.
saying is, had we moved forward with the contract, we still would have had an increase here in this line item.
we would
That's
have, yeah.
my
And their
point.
per capita rate pretty much
Rob-
increases every year anyway, too.
But Orla, that's not how I remember it. The way I remember, we had those higher numbers from NECOG, but we were not paying that.
No, we never did.
Nor would we
No.
have paid that this year. So
So-
I hear you, Rhonda, but I think we are seeing an increase over what the projection would be. And that questioning, for Jan and Orla, it's not about any, criticism of the services.
No, I agree.
We're happy.
But I
about-
think I know what you're asking, Rob, and I think
I
one of
support you, Orla, but I think that we need to, maybe think about the animal control fund that we had, and could that help offset, the next, this year, next year, and the next couple of years as we get this off the ground, right? That
So just to
money,
give you-
that money's earmarked for this. So how much is left in that fund, Orla, today?
So we appropriated 20,000, just so you know, and we've spent a little bit less than 15,000 on that. I know when Jan came to the Board of Selectmen, there's a number of different projects that she wants to work with, some smaller capital improvement projects. So the bottom line is this $20,000 will be gone by the end of June. But we started with 73, we allocated 20, so we've got 53,000 in the fund. We always increase the fund based on our licenses. We're coming into licenses season. So we'll see it increasing over the next few months again. And we always get a portion of that associated towards the fund. But a couple of things to keep in mind, Rob. NECOG did us a huge favor when we had to stop the services at the Thompson Pound. They were willing to work with us on a temporary basis, on a per case basis, but they were getting to the stage where they weren't willing to do that anymore. So I think if we had not, and I think Amy would agree with this, if we had not approached them and said, listen, we're ready to take on somebody new, we're going to hire a person who's going to be located in our town, they would have insisted on the contract, which I believe for fiscal 21 was 29,000 and change.
But Rob Mann, Board of Finance. I also have a comment / kind of question. We would have also had to forfeit that capital expense account to NECOG. Am I correct? If we did not have our own animal control officer facility.
I did hear that from somebody. I never confirmed it for sure, Rob, but I did hear somebody say that at one stage.
So getting back onto Rob's question is, can we take some of that money out of that fund to offset some of these expenses for this year? Or does that money specifically have to be used for something specific?
So the idea of it is, I know Rob Mann just mentioned it as a capital improvement. The history of it was used for improvements at the pound, which is what your appropriation of $20,000 helped do. I did suggest, and I believe I suggested it to Jan and Amy, that when it came down to it for fiscal 21, when we were over the budget, which was 24,000 and change, it made sense to come back to you guys and ask for an appropriation. So the answer is yes. We very little in contingency. So in this year in particular, I think it's reasonable to expect that I will be coming back to you and requesting an appropriation out of the dog fund to cover any overage of the budget for fiscal 21. 22, we'd like to sustain ourselves because, that the fund is great, but, the more we take out of it, the less there's going to be. But if you see, based on our estimate, so 36,000 is our estimate. Our budget was 24. So in theory, if things go according to what we're seeing here in front of us, I'm going to be coming back to you guys and asking you for $12,000.
You have five in excess already from the 20, right?
Well, actually, we have that earmarked towards specific projects. So the 5,000, which is left from the 20, does not include anything in this current budget that you're looking at right now.
Seems like we were, to Rob's point, a little misled on what was going to happen in 21.
Well, not necessarily. I think, and it was clear that it was unclear to all concerned as to how much it was going to cost us to operate the pound. We didn't have any internet connectivity there, so that's costing us $1,375 to enable us to, Jan has a computer there now. She processes all of the monthly reports to the state via that. We didn't have any internet access there. We didn't have toilet facilities. We put something in there. There has been some savings in the travel area because Amy was able to earmark the van that we purchased a number of years ago towards, Jan has now retrofit the van to enable her to travel with dogs. So she doesn't have the need for reimbursement for travel. So there's savings in some areas and there's gains in others. The biggest expense, and I think Jan, you would agree with this, is the vet services, really, correct?
Absolutely. It's the vet services. And that's why I was thanking Woodstock, because they're cutting, even with the surgeries that I'm getting done there, they're cutting the bill a lot for us to get things done there. So they're really good as far as medication, surgeries. If I have an emergency, I go right in. They're not charging at all what a normal client would go in and pay. So they're working with us, knowing that we're a shelter, knowing that they need to cut costs down for us to be able to keep saving the animals. And they're really good about it over there at Woodstock. But that was the biggest concern of mine, was the vet bills. They are extremely expensive. And unfortunately, at the dog pound, you don't always get happy, healthy animals. Usually you're going to get the sick, the injured, the unwanted, the ones that need the care. That's why I'm thinking about fundraisers and other things that I can do coming up this spring when the weather starts getting nice like it is now, to try to build up that fund more so we can always have money to help the animals that really need it. That's the biggest concern for me, is the vet. And plus you've got Bolton. I've been to Bolton at 12:30 at night with a very sick animal that had to be euthanized. You can't just let it sit there overnight and suffer. That was a big bill that had to be paid. I couldn't wait for the vet to open. You've got to move on things like that. And unfortunately, the vet bills, it's a pretty highlighted area as far as my budget's concerned. It's a big one. It is.
If I could jump in again, my concern is that originally I stated that it was intended to be pretty much a break-even proposition, and it's not. Now, if we had pegged it at 36 last year, we still may have done it. So we're not questioning whether it was the right thing to do or not. But we didn't just miss the 1,500 in vet services. We missed from line 47 to line 54. We missed almost $10,000 of expenses. We didn't miss one. We forgot about the vet, or we forgot about the cameras. I mean, we missed heating, electric, all of it. And that we got to do better in the future. If we take on new things like this, our projections need to be tighter.
This is Amy St. again, and I think if I'm looking back to this, we knew we wanted to bring the animal control program back to Thompson. Last year, the pandemic hit, and if you recall, we were under the gun to pass a flat budget. And we said, we want to kick this program off. And in some ways, maybe we were foolish in saying we can do it for 24,000. We can make it work, was our thought, because we knew that we had the 60 some odd thousand. Wasn't it 60,000, Orla, in the dog fund?
It was 60 something back then.
But we've only used, because we thought, oh, well, we can lean on that, but we haven't touched that fund except for to make repairs to the building. So what we thought could help pull us through until we could get the program up and running, and then we could set better objectives. We really put that number on so that we could keep the budget flat. We didn't spend the time that we needed, and yes, it was irresponsible on our part. I will admit. We thought we can make this work, and we probably should have spent more time projecting numbers better. So
the other thing is we're actually just, in addition to animals, in addition to dogs, John will give you an idea of, she's also accepting other animals too, and she's getting additional certifications on other types of animal control. Correct, John?
Yes, actually, I just finished a course, NUCO, for the Department of Environmental, Energy and Protection, so I can be a wildlife nuisance operator in the state. and in the town of Thompson. So when somebody has an issue, if they hit a deer in the road, if there's a, a rabid coyote or a raccoon in somebody's garage, something like that, I'll be able to, with the proper gun license, which I've obtained and I'm waiting for right now to come through, to handle those things. So you won't have to call the troop, pull them off a domestic case to come in and, dispatch an animal in the road when they can call animal control and I can handle the wildlife. So you won't have to worry about any of that either, because it'll be encompassed within my position. So not just domestics, but also wildlife. And I've been handling some cats, not on sick and injured as the law states, but I'm handling everything basically. And as soon as this license comes through, it'll be the wildlife as well.
So we've definitely services down.
Can I make a comment? This is Suzanne.
Go ahead, Suzanne.
And this is something that I have been very strongly in favor of reopening the dog pound. And as Amy said, we weren't 100% sure of what it would take until we got in there and Jan started to work and to get this up and running. I have a question for Orla. Orla, how much is taken in that is accessible to the animal control officer each year from the licenses and fees and things like that?
See if I can access that information.
I recall it's $1 per dog license.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I don't think that maybe we have not considered that factor when talking about the dog fund.
Well, I did mention that it increases on an annual basis when we collect the licenses, but
And I've increased the impound fee. I don't know
that's
if that.
true.
Right.
You have. Yeah.
I've
Right.
increased the impound fee and then the nightly charge. Like for an animal I've got right now, your main quarantine, I'm quarantining your animal for 10 days. I'm charging you $20 for an impound fee flat. Every other night after that, it's going to be 15, which I believe it used to be 12, I think. So at the end of
So
the
Orla, if that's not, I'm sorry, Jan.
No, I'm just saying, I'm trying to up the prices for what I'm
Right.
doing as well as adoptions as well to try to recoup. And if I can keep any amount of dollars out of the fee you were just talking about, keep it in the account, just put it right back in there.
Orla, if it's not accessible right now, maybe for the next meeting, because that technically part of that money could be used to offset this particular budget. If we had, I don't think that we've taken that into consideration.
Well, when you guys met as a board of selectmen, there was a lot of, as you know, there was a lot of discussion with regards to how best to use monetary donations that are being received on a regular basis currently. And I believe there was a consensus to use most of those donations for vet services, correct? Is that
Well, that's
right, Amy?
different though. That's donations.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. But
So
it
we
all goes into
created
the
a
same
transfer
pot.
account for that. Yeah,
It
I
all
was
goes into
going
the
there.
same pot. Yeah. But no, let me, you know what, if I can't get in quickly by the end of the meeting, I'll get that to you guys by next week.
Because I think what we were hoping is to keep like 50,000 in that account. And that is for any large vet bills kind of thing. And we did create a transfer account for donations, which you had taken out of the dog fund that Jan could use at her discretion. Yeah. So, and what was in that account? Was it
It was
5,000 or, oh, was it that low?
Oh, gosh, let me see. Amy or John, do you remember? I thought I had it with me, but I don't.
I don't know what it was. I know that you were discussing doing it. I don't have the amount.
And if we don't have that dollar amount.
Oh, I do actually. I do. Well, in total, you're right, $5,000. It's roughly
Yeah,
$5,000.
So once we have an idea of how much actually is being generated, and that would be an estimate, and I know it will be different after we have one full year behind us, but it might be that we can help to offset this particular budget and reduce just the bottom line by something.
Thank you, Suzanne. That's kind of what I was looking for, some creative way to help offset it. You know, what's happened in the past has happened. We can't change that we missed it, but our next make sure our next expansion, the next departments, we're just gonna need to pressure test these a little better, because it's a pretty sizable miss. If we can get creative, I feel, I don't want to speak for the whole board, but if we can get creative to help get this more neutral, people that have pets love it. I'm happy about it, but people in town that don't have pets may say, why are we spending this much money to take care of pets? I don't have pets. Let people that have pets pay for it, right? So I appreciate that, Suzanne. And I think we can get maybe a little creative here moving forward, and we can move back to it.
I do too. And we have definitely got some plans to do some fundraising.
And the truth is, this is Amy Sainonge again. The truth is, we started one fundraiser. It was just a GoFundMe for the general program, and we were able to generate $1,800 in a few weeks' time. And that's going to be our focus, including volunteerism. We've planned a cleanup day in the next few weeks at the pound. So, yeah.
Yeah,
It's definitely a work in progress, that's for sure.
yeah.
Amy, do you have any information on when that cleanup day is?
Kind of making sure that the weather was going to continue to break, but announce it sometime in mid-April. Have to work together with Jan. I know that my husband Jason has taken upon himself to go to the pound a few times already, just to start the cleanup and get and assess the situation. And we certainly have about 10 or 15 people that want to come and help.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we'll be announcing it in the next week or so.
Add me to the list.
Who was that?
Thank you, Erin.
This will all be good. Give me 1 year to have this under my belt, and you'll notice a marked improvement in the budget and in my responses and in the way this whole program is running. The business side of this is new to me. I'm an ACO, an animal person, and not a finance person, but I'm catching on. I'm learning how to handle all of this, and give me the time. I'll prove it. I'll prove it to you guys. It's going to be good.
So at the risk of asking a question that may be redundant, we kind of started moving this conversation in the direction of being creative to sort of mitigate the severity of the increase. And was there any sort of conclusion as to what that creativity might look like? Was it sort of maybe withdrawing a few dollars from that dog fund, or was it something else? I just wanted to, before we leave this section of the budget, as we all sort of make our notes so that we remember what was on our minds when we were last on this page. Was there any specifics mentioned as to what that creativity might look like or not?
I think it was taking money from that budget, from that account for the budget, and also fundraisers.
Okay.
Erin, what I would like to see is 50,000 left in the dog fund. And I think I heard there's 53 in there now. And then I'd also be curious as to what the fees are generating each year. And I think Orla needed to do a little bit of research, because part of those fees, not 100% of them, do belong to the ACO. So there could be a decent amount of savings that we could bring it down quite a bit.
So Suzanne, I just did a quick number here. I got into Munis. So the average, not taking into account fiscal 21, fiscal 18, 19, and 20, the average is 12,000 per year. That's what's coming in for the licenses.
Only the licenses,
1,000?
and that was without Jan, right?
12,000, yes.
Yeah, and plus, don't forget.
How much of that actually goes to the ACO though?
It
for
all
her
goes
use?
into the dog fund. So currently, it has to be appropriated out of the dog fund to be used by Jan. So it
But-
doesn't go to the ACO as such, it goes into the dog fund.
The dog fund that's accessible by the ACO, but not all of that is for the animal control to use. Is that correct? Part of that has to go to the state, part of that, it's broken down into different areas, right?
No, that's the town's portion of it.
Oh, all right. Oh my
Yes.
goodness, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, that
That's
is
a
the town's portion. Now, for example, so far this year, we've collected 5,700, but that was only at the beginning of the fiscal year. Towards the end of the fiscal year, we'll be bringing in some more money. So that'll bring it right back up again.
But those are funds we would receive regardless of this.
So basically you could flat fund this.
That income is going to come in regardless of this department.
Correct.
That's not.
Where's that currently going?
Doesn't-
Debbie?
doesn't make
It
a
is,
slight
it is,
difference. This
It
may
is
make a slight
increasing,
difference
Steve.
in the sense that maybe people are more concerned about avoiding getting their dogs registered, but it really doesn't change the income one way or the other.
Well, believe me, we
Thanks.
wouldn't have this money coming into us if we did outsource this service. The money would be going to the outsourced facility. It wouldn't be coming to us.
Isn't it?
I did happen to hear the phrase, you could flat fund this.
Well, if they're taking in 12,000 and we want to keep 50,000 in the account and we're at 53 right now, I mean, I'm only one person and that's my personal opinion.
At 41. You're at 41 right now, Suzanne.
No, we're at 53 right now in the overall fund.
12,000, but Orla, you need 12,000 to get through this year.
Correct.
So you're at 41, really.
Yes, after the end of the year, if it goes, you're correct, Rob.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Why 50, Suzanne? Why not peg 40 or 30? Why 50 is a nice round number, but
Yeah, I agree. What's the magic about keeping a big kitty?
Something catastrophic, something, something happens with an animal that there's an expense with,
50 grand is a lot of money.
it does seem like a lot of money, but I think it's a matter of being, a little bit cautious because it is not the first full year.
So Orla, the chat, you just put in the 6,600. It just went away on my screen. Is that
Oh,
what would
that-
be left in there?
No, that's related to emergency management. I was just getting back to Jamie on a question he had asked me earlier on. I just noticed that.
So there's really no way to
And-
offset this at this time based on what's in the kitty if you wanted to keep the 50. Is that correct? After this conversation, just,
That's a big
No,
if, Rhonda, don't you think?
huh?
That's a big if you want to keep the 50.
And I see where you're going with that. And then the only reason I say 50 is Mary, the previous ACO, was always very guarded about the dog fund and not spending it for any kind of,
She did it,
emergency
yeah,
vet
she
bills.
only did- She only did it for maintenance projects at the pound. That did not get included in her regular budget.
but the
I think the
reality,
last time she spent any money out of it was 2012.
yeah, the reality is that the maintenance hasn't been done in all those years. So we talked about
Right.
this last year that we had some catch up. We knew that to get this going, it was going to have to dip into that fund. And I get you, Suzanne, you don't want to, you need something for a rainy day. 50, I'm with Steve, 50 is a lot.
I don't know if it's rainy day. It's like an insurance.
I
sort
say
of-
rainy day
Yeah,
for unexpected,
it's like an
Yeah.
insurance, What is the bottom line? I don't have my budget in front of me. Can you go down or up
Sure,
either
yeah.
way? And that's what I was saying is I think we could technically reduce it by the 8,000.
So you'd be willing to take 8,000 out of that particular account, bringing it
Well-
to what, 35,000 roughly? Is that?
With expecting the income from all of next year to go into that account. I don't know if we'd be comfortable with the full 8,000. I'm only one person. I'm not the ACO either. It's actually not my budget. It's Jan's. So I shouldn't even be saying it.
Suzanne, where are you getting the 8,000 from?
We're at 32,000
Now I get you. Yeah,
and we were at, was it 24, 20?
24. Yeah, I get you.
Almost. I guess, that's up to you guys, the Board of Finance.
So do you want to just like highlight this one, Orla? So we can, I think what we're doing is just going through everything now and then coming back and making decisions later. Is that correct, Aaron? I don't know how much time we have left.
I'm okay with that. I know we took action on the first selectman's salary, but we kind of thought this is more than just about the first selectman, the person. This is about the position, and it was kind of a no-brainer for us. So I guess there's nothing that would stop us from making decisions along the way. But I know traditionally what we have done is we kind of walk through the budgets, individual sections of the budget, ask the questions, find out what's the rationale behind these things. and then get all the way through and then kind of get a sense of, each of the six of us kind of collect some areas that we want to go back to and make some changes to. So we can always come back to this page. There's nothing that would stop us from coming back to this page.
And Erin, can I ask a question from the last two meetings and then this meeting? And forgive me if I oversaw this, but did we get something for the last two meetings that showed all the different things that we were kind of hinging to come back to? Because I don't recall receiving that.
I know Patty's keeping a running count.
Yes.
So perhaps maybe between this meeting and the next meeting, she could send us the quick bullet list. Rob Word kind of referred to them as our homework assignments.
Thank you.
No problem. You'll have to forgive me, everyone. I heard someone use the phrase, it wasn't level fund, but it was flat fund. And as the chairman of the Board of Finance, I'm just kind of wired to respond to phrases like that. So I couldn't help but ask that question and say, whoa, well, we don't necessarily have to take any action, but boy, let's expand upon what that phrase could potentially mean. What would it look like? Just so that we're very clear, just in case, not to say that we are going to flat fund, but just when I hear a phrase like that, I always stop and sort of peel back the layers a little bit just to find out what's going on. It's kind of my job.
Thank you, Erin.
Any other discussion?
Can I ask one silly question? What is dog damages?
Dog damages is if there's a roaming law in town and in the state, and if somebody's dog is let out of their property and not kept contained, goes onto someone else's land, destroys their chicken coop, rips open their rabbit hutch, kills a bunch of their animals, well, that's dog damages. And you have to go over there, investigate the whole thing, find out what dog did it, prove it, which entails taking the dog into the impound and looking for signs and for evidence. You have to get a person out there to give an estimate, a third party that's not involved. And if it's over $100, the town would have to help the person get their things fixed up and done, and then we get reimbursed by the state. I think this is something, well, that I just went through with Ken, I think, in the last meeting, because he wanted to know about it too. So it's basically damages that dogs do to livestock that are owned by others or destruction of their property. And that's what that's for. So the town is liable to actually help people out if the damage is $100 or over $100 worth of damage. And then that person would either pay us back, or you could put a lien on the people if you needed to do so, but usually that doesn't have to happen. The state in turn takes all the reports from myself and from the state ACO I report to, and they pay back the municipalities that way.
So this is really a net cost of zero. Am I understanding you correctly? At the end of the day, we
Basically.
get reimbursed either by the offender or
the state, yeah, basically, yeah. But we would have to step in and help someone if they couldn't get it done and the damage was over that amount of money, $100. The town has to help the people get things done.
Well, why is that expense for the town? I don't want
It
to
is, and until we report everything to the state, and then we would get reimbursed that way. So in the end, eventually, if it doesn't come from the perpetrator, then it comes from the state.
So
Not from the town. So why would we budget to spend it? I'm not.
So for accounting purposes, we are going to record that as miscellaneous coming into the general fund.
Okay.
So it would end up being a wash essentially, but it would be in two different locations.
So do we have an income for this $500 somewhere?
We have a line item for miscellaneous income. So
we have the 500 in there for that, but I don't think we have miscellaneous. I don't believe I do. I can add
well,
that.
I do have a miscellaneous income line, John, which is in a separate part of the budget.
Oh, okay.
So
well, there
that's
you go.
where the money would go in.
Okay. Yeah, and that's actually a lot. It doesn't happen a lot. Usually when this happens, it's a neighbor. They know the people. They might not be happy, but I usually can help to facilitate be the conduit between the two people to get them calm enough to talk to each other, to work it out on their own. It's happened multiple times since I've been doing this job. I usually can get people to pay back, work something out with their neighbor where they don't have to go through all of that and to come to the town for help. It has happened once in the last 5 times I've investigated it. So that money will probably just sit.
If you
Aaron,
like, guys, I can share with you a list of all of the necessary capital improvements that Jan has done at the pound so far on some of the items that she's proposing to do by the end of June, if that would be of help to you guys.
It'd be great.
Okay, send it over.
That's all right.
Aaron, it's Rob. I had a recommendation. Maybe the other board members could chime in if they support it or think it's a decent idea. A number of these departments have revenue coming in that doesn't show on the revenue line. We talked about this last week with EDC now. It's in this special fund and the money, the income that the rec department brings in. We have income coming in through the canine control operation. It might be helpful if Orla could put that, it doesn't have to be embedded in the spreadsheet numbers that you have, Orla, but if it was at the top of the page, we'd have it, and it gives us a relative idea on, you know, what kind of return is coming in, what are people paying for, and what are the taxpayers paying for, particularly on targeted services like this. Folks that have kids that use the rec department, they're paying for that. People that are, I'm back to my bulky waste, right? People that are dumping bulky waste are paying for that. If that number's on the budgets, I don't know, I'd find it helpful because we seem to ask it on almost all the departments that have this separate bucket of income.
Sure, I will do so. I'll add them for next week
Well,
for each of the
I
departments.
think it's a good idea.
If I'm the only one that sees value in it, then I wouldn't do it. But if the other 5 would appreciate that too, then we should consider doing it.
Rob,
I think that's a great idea.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I think
It'll save time too.
absolutely. I think it's a great idea. Thank you, Rob.
Well, I like it too, and the reason I like it is because sometimes it helps us to ask the question is, where is this revenue coming from? What are people paying for? Are we charging enough? Because that was kind of the bulky waste conversation. Whoa, are we charging enough? And sometimes the decision to charge is not in our hands. I think last year we were talking about, was it the fee for having a transfer station permit, and that's set by a different board or commission. But at least we were able to send the message over to that other board or commission. Hey, could you do us a favor? It feels like, based on our analysis, maybe we're not charging enough for this service. So at least having that, if there is a revenue number, obviously it's not a revenue line. It's on the expense side of the budget, but it's just reminding us that this section of the budget does produce X amount of money, and it helps us to say, well, gee, is this the right amount to be charging?
Rob, man, I agree. It gives you a balance of what's going on when you just review things.
Okie dokie, I'll get each of those. Yeah, that's a very easy process, Rob, so I'll be happy to do that.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you, Orla.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Rob.
And just also, before we jump off, Canine, just to thank you to Jan. I've not met you, Jan, and you got put right into the fire here tonight. I think many of us really appreciate what you're doing. So please don't leave thinking all these questions are, we don't support animal control. I think we do. We just want to find the best way to make it work for the town. I certainly want to find that best way.
I agree. And I want to concur with that. We don't want to, this has no reflection on Jan in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, just having worked with Rob Words for the last 18 months or so, I can say with confidence that if any part of the budget, whether it was canine control or other, had sort of walked a story similar to this, he would have said, let's talk about it. So it's not about the program, it's about the numbers. But Jan, thank you so much for the work you're doing for Thompson. I appreciate it. And I look forward to putting my work boots on and my work pants and heading over to the dog pound whenever we have this day that everybody gets together to pitch in and help clean the place up.
I'd be interested in that as well.
Any other discussion on canine control operation? Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to town garage. Looks like town garage is pretty steady. Looks like there's no increases there, unless anybody has any questions about town garage. So then we would move on to the next one, which I suspect probably will have some questions, Public Works.
Yes.
There's
Just a quick question on the prior budget. There's $25,000 for building maintenance. That's not capital, I'm assuming?
do you mean the building repairs line item?
Building repairs, yeah, I'm sorry.
I believe Rich is on the call, correct, Amy?
Yes, I believe Rich was,
But-
but no, that's not capital. That's just basic building repairs.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need.
I was going to say, Steve, it sounded more like your question was an accounting question as opposed to a programmatic question. Meaning, are these building repairs, are they investing in the longer useful life in some meaningful way, in that they should be capitalized in some kind of way, as opposed to operating?
You got it.
Okay, I'll move on.
So
Okay, next one is
Public Works.
the public work. Yeah. So I'll just leave it on the top items first. If anybody has any questions, and just give me a holler and I'll move it down.
I guess the biggest one is the equipment operator. Was this part of the conversation about shifting duties out of the town hall? Is this related to that in any way because it's brand new, or is this a whole different ball of wax?
No, this was part of the union contract negotiation, so that's in this current contract. That was a position set up internally to pay skilled people for operation of equipment, whether it be backhoe, sweeper, any type of large equipment, so that they get paid to run that machinery, as to use their skills to do so, as opposed to the individuals that don't have those skills that get paid the same money.
Does that mean equipment operator is not necessarily one operator?
I believe the way that we were budgeting it was for 2 people per day for the year, and that it would balance itself out, as certain days there might be 3 or 4 operators and other days there would be 0. Obviously during the winter months, there would be very limited operation of equipment, so that would balance off the construction season, where if we had somebody out running a backhoe doing a drainage job, and somebody was in another piece, the loader on the drainage job, and then I had somebody out mowing roadsides, that would signify 3 operators, versus in the winter time when they're plowing snow, mostly doing busy work. If we're doing tree work, you might have an operator running the bucket truck and everybody else is just a laborer. So you would only be giving that stipend to one individual.
So this is Rob Works. Rich, so if I follow you correctly, it's the same, call it 9 people. They're paid different. The same people are paid differently depending on the actual work they're doing at that particular time.
Correct.
So does this have anything to do with the highway maintainer line item going down?
No, I believe that line item went down due to moving funds that would be for, I don't remember. Hold
Looks
on.
like you added an equipment operator
Let me get to
and
that line
reduced
item.
the highway maintainer.
This is Amy Sainage. I think the way Orla did the work is that she moved 2 of the maintainers into equipment operator positions. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's correct.
Okay.
That's why it looks like the maintainer's position went down because of the way that she moved them.
I just noticed, you go up 108 in one line, you go down 94 in another line, and the director of public works says we're compensating people based on the actual work that they're doing, as opposed to just everybody getting paid the same, so to speak. Not that they're all getting paid, but just using general terms, paying people for what they're doing. I just figured that these 2 line items, there must be some relationship between the 2.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of how that went into the budget proposal. I hadn't seen that as of yet.
Yeah, it's right there. So,
Yeah, the only information that I have is what I proposed that I did back in January. I don't have an updated copy of what's showing up on the screen. So this is the first time I've seen that.
Rich, this was provided to all of the department heads.
I don't have it.
No worries. But
It was
so,
emailed to everyone.
basically this was like this. We're talking about like a $13,500 swing between the 2. You go down 94, basically almost 95 on one, and then you go up 108 on the other. So at least that kind of tells us the true net cost to doing what it is that Rich is talking about is basically 13 and change. Paying a couple of people to do specifically for the work that they're doing, as opposed to just showing up and being staff people of the town garage.
Correct.
And I think the adder, Aaron, that I heard was that those 2 people are what you'd call an FTE, a full-time equivalent. It could be a number of the different 9 people
Yes.
filling that 2 FTE at different times, depending on the workload and what Rich has in front of him. I mean,
Got it.
it could be 4 of them. Tomorrow it could be none of them.
Yeah.
Is that correct, Rich?
Correct. That was the best way we could figure out how to do it to make it work budgetary without assigning it to be 2 set positions for 2 set people.
That's right.
so in other words, this increase is really primarily some raises. That increase right there, and then the new secretary clerk, 24 hours.
Correct.
I think important to note, Rhonda, it's not just a basic wage raise. It's compensation for the job that they're doing as well. When they're operating equipment, that's a different job at a different pay rate.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So it's probably a little bit of both. Is the wage increase in there as well, Rich? Is that a little bit of both?
Oh, I missed part of what you were just saying. What was
Is
the question?
Is the 13,280 a combination of a wage increase across the board for those 9 individuals and an increase for the time that they're doing the operator job?
No, this as I said before, this is all part of the contract, the union contract that was just agreed upon by the town. So the union employees are taking a 0 increase this year due to other things that they were able to succeed upon in the contract, and also the fact that they've gotten 2% back-to-back 2 years in a row. So the 13,280 would just be specifically the cost of those 2 operator justifications for the term of the year, which was also a contracted increase. That's part of the union contract to add those 2 basically floating positions, which if I remember correctly, was signified as $1.50 per hour increase during the times that they were assigned.
Somewhat of a de facto raise because it's the same work they were doing last year. They'll get compensated for doing it this year, right?
Thank you.
Good point.
On the secretary, part of that, remind us, please, how much of that moved over and how much of that is incremental? Because there were some hours that were there already, right?
We had 11 hours. I believe that was it 11 or 13 hours? 11 hours.
11.
11 to
Was
22.
was noted as Public Works, as opposed to the hours that were worked for the town hall.
Now you go into 24 hours?
Correct. 3 days per week.
Rich, the obvious question is, why do we need to double the hours? More than double the hours?
Basically, at the moment, she's not really doing me much justice working out of the town hall. That was how it was laid out when I started here 3 years ago. And a lot of the question has been, what necessitates the need at the highway department to have somebody on site as a assistant. And basically what it comes down to, and I do believe that everybody was provided with a list of responsibilities that were put together for that position. So a lot of those things are kind of sort of not happening at the moment because they all fall on me. Basically on a week-to-week basis, Kelly is working at the town hall. She's for my department, she's handling my billing on a weekly basis. I bring in my invoices. She handles and tracks all of my purchase orders and submits things to the finance department for payment. She does field some phone calls for DPW related issues or communications between myself and the public. But there's nobody running my office, and it's very difficult for me to focus really much of my time on being in the office and doing skills that aren't really my forte as far as filing, organization in the office, and developing spreadsheets to track things, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things that need to happen. Especially now that we're branching kind of into new territory with trying to be more compliant with OSHA regulations and safety and trainings and so on and so forth, that I need that support system in place, and every other highway department around here has that type of support, at least in a larger town like we are. To be able to have somebody there to handle all of these tasks that I really, unfortunately, we haven't been done prior to my time, haven't been done, and a lot of things are still currently not getting completed, or at least not getting completed in the manner they should be, because I can't afford the time to it. There's just too many other responsibilities that have come forth in my job over the last 3 years that we've never done before, that we need to do, and we are doing to move forward with the improvements that we're working on. So it's basically a much needed support system to handle the office operations.
Any other points of discussion?
I have a
One
question.
other point, Aaron, similar to what Steve had brought up earlier, for such a big department, I think looking at that FY21 estimate to see where the run rate is.
You mean the bottom line? The
Just-
33,275?
No, if we look at the estimate for FY21, basically all that budget again.
Oh, the 997,236 down at the bottom?
Exactly. Yeah, the 997,236, it's within, striking distance of the 993. I got on the other one, it was hard for Orla to pull it all together, but on this one, we have updates on where things are coming in.
For me, it's very useful to look at the current the year we're in, the most current year, that's a very useful number to consider what you might project for the next year, as opposed to simply what you budgeted for the prior year. So putting in a good estimate for FY21 is, for me anyway, very helpful in sort of trying to understand what we might need in the coming year.
Usually what I'll end up doing is if I don't have any information provided to me for estimate for 21, I'm just going to put in whatever the budget number was. But, and that's what's most likely here. The payroll is payroll. That's not going to change. Might be a slight bit timing on the highway maintainers just because of the time of hiring individuals at that department, but I can't really say for the others because if I didn't have any numbers, I just plugged in whatever the budget number was.
Well, like overtime, for example, is it's going up 50%. It's from budgeted and 20% over what was the year before. I'm sort of want to make sure that current year estimate's something we understand.
Sure. I think something like that. If I see the numbers year to date are substantially higher than we're budgeted are, and if I don't have any numbers specifically, I'm going to enter in what I think would be the estimate. So in that case, most likely overtime in this particular line item was already higher. I'm just in the back end here checking actually.
Marla, I can answer that.
Go ahead, Rich.
So at the time of putting my budget proposal together, I kept my my printout for what my year-to-date expenditures were for at the time that I wrote my budget. And I have it in front of me. So for overtime expenses, this was printed January 12th. That's when this report was run. So at that time, our overtime expenses were $10,345.80. So we were negative $2,345.80, which was that was what drove the increase, was trying to figure out where we would be come the end of the fiscal year. And basically there again, what's driving those costs is the increased amounts of road construction that we've been doing, the increased need for our services after hours, which are beyond our control, whether it's windstorms or car accidents for road closures, a brief, the wind blows and a couple of trees come down and we're out closing down roads. So there's been a significant increase in our overtime. And I try to do my best to, not have extra people coming into work when they don't need to be there. It just, one of the unfortunate things is like, we get a phone call, tree down in the middle of the night, no wires involved. That's two people coming into work. And if it takes them a half an hour per their contract, they're getting paid 2 hours minimum for showing up. And I say two people because I won't call in one person if they're running equipment or running a chainsaw. There has to be somebody else there to maintain safety. If it's a simple road closure, I call one person in, they go out, they put up a couple cones and barricades and they're back home in bed in, usually an hour, but we're still paying 2 hours.
And it's different
Rich,
this year than last year, I take it.
What was that?
I say, I take it then it's this year has been a lot different than last year.
This was just, I don't know what spiked the total increase. I see that if you, I'm just trying to read the column before that. So we were at 8,000. The year before that was, is that what's showing 99?
I think 8,000 is budget, Rich. The 12 is estimate. The 10,000 roughly is last year, and the 6,000 was the year before.
Correct.
Rich,
So
I just took a look at the numbers. To date, we have 11,363.
Okay. Yeah. So we're
So yes, it
definitely.
seems reasonable. I mean, my question, why it's bigger than prior years, but at least the estimate seems not unreasonable.
Basically the numbers are based on need. A lot of the overtime expenses are beyond control. And a lot of that stuff also is somewhat equipment repair related as well, because my mechanic he gets his overtime usually throughout the year from having to stay late to fix something because we need it for tomorrow's job, or so on and so forth. So that was, that's showing as part of that increase in time. But that's not just a free for all. That has to be approved by me first before it happens. It has to necessitate the need, and it just this is what's going to continue to happen. The further into the future we go, the more requirements are placed on my department, and it's going to show an increase. Unfortunately there's no two ways around it.
Anything else in this top section here, these first 7 lines?
Aaron, could you repeat that? It was hard to hear.
Sorry. Any other questions or comments on these first 7 lines? Because right now we're talking about basically these payroll type items. I know we've got some other items further down in the Public Works budget that are not payroll related. So I figured I'd ask if there's any more questions or comments on these top 7 lines that are payroll oriented. And if not, then we can move down into what appears to be more programmatic type of expenses. Like contractor for MS4, equipment rentals, uniform service, safety, water monitoring, medical, physical. Rich, is there a story behind this contractor for MS4? It looks like it's gone up by a pretty decent clip in the last few fiscal years.
Most of that is it's required for our state MS4 permit. But the one thing that did change, which is an increase, is this coming year we're going to be switching over to J&D Engineering to do our annual reporting for our MS4 permit. With a lot of the costs associated are permitting and engineering, and also sampling and so on, that has to do with tracking our stormwater and the pollutants that we're putting into the rivers, which it's required by the state. So in the past, our wetlands agent has handled all of our reporting for MS4 on a yearly basis. Currently, we're a little out of compliance. I know that Marla has had some health issues as she was injured last year, and it really affected her ability to make her deadlines as far as what was going on, and she's kind of gearing down for retirement. There's really all of the Amy will agree that the MS4 stuff is very confusing to somebody that doesn't have any sort of a background in that type of science. And you can get lost rather easily. So most of our local towns that are involved in the MS4 program are actually utilizing J&D to do their annual reporting. And because they do assist us with a lot of the tasks associated with the MS4 program, we just thought that it was a natural move to also bring that over to them, so we can bring ourselves back into compliance and continue to move forward with our permitting.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion on other areas of the Public Works budget?
Aaron,
Go ahead, Jim.
question. Is it too early to talk about capital requests for the Public Works Department? So I have a couple of questions before we really start getting into that.
Does it require us flipping down to that capital improvement?
Well, I'm just, it's all related, you know what I'm saying? I mean, we're talking numbers up here, but we're talking equipment, but it's all part of their full budget. I'm just curious if it's okay to ask a question about that at this time.
Go for it, because, Rich is right here, so.
Well, that's why Rich, last year, we were discussing the resurfacing of Aquatic Road. And at that time, you had told me that there was some type of money that could be allocated to us that we had to pay up front for the resurfacing, but that after the fact that we would get back a very significant percentage of that money. Is that still on the table, or is that something that's going by us?
No, that was apparently what happened. We had discussions with NECOG about what it was called was a collector road grant. So that road was eligible for certain grant funds. The problem that we ran into was the program for those funding is not very popular, which we found out after the fact due to the requirements of the program. So what happened was we did fill out the initial application for the funding, and that application goes through NECOG and it goes to the Department of Transportation for possible funding. What ended up happening was the cost of the project went over what was eligible for consideration for funding. And it's kind of silly how it happened, but basically what it comes down to is if you look at my capital expense for road resurfacing for this year, it shows a cost estimate of roughly $705,000 to do the Aquatic Road project.
Correct.
So that is grinding the road, regrading it, removing material where applicable, and then resurfacing. And there is some other costs associated with the project for cleanup work, as far as making repairs to people's driveways, putting in driveway aprons to protect the road, so on and so forth. So back to the grant, what happens is when you apply for that particular grant, you have to use the state's cost estimation calculator in order to put forth an estimated cost of the project. So part of that is you have to use their numbers for what it would cost to grind the road. You have to use their numbers for what it would cost to pave the road. And then you have to add I believe it was 10% for unforeseen costs, and then an additional 10% for basic fluff as like emergency funds in case you forgot something that should have been included in the initial 10%. So the total cost of the project was well over $1.4 million by the time we filled out all the paperwork for that. And so we submitted it, and it ended up, it got kicked back for ineligibility for funding because basically the price point on the funding was projects under $1 million. So even though we can do the project for well under $1 million, that doesn't matter because you have to use their numbers. So we lost that one.
Too bad, because that would have been a nice windfall for us.
I was excited to receive that money. I really thought that we could pull it off. We were gonna have to spend some out-of-pocket funds for some engineering and some survey work to lay the road out to make it suitable for on paper for the funding source, but they kind of took the air out of my sails pretty quick.
I have a question, probably a dumb question, but I mean, could you have reduced the amount of road that we were going to pave to meet the $1 million limit? So it was reduced, so you could get a smaller portion of the
Well,
road completed with the grant?
We could have done that. The other problem that we ran into, I was informed by NECOG that even if we were to go through the process to try to get funding for that road, even if we reduced the scale of the project and did say half of it, and then we came in on our own and did the other half, or however it might have worked out, that the closest ability for funding that we could see was 3 to 4 years out if we got accepted. And that was after spending like $30,000 to $40,000 in planning. It was still an if. So we unfortunately, Amy and I discussed it. We went over the details, and it didn't make any sense to try to move forward with it because there was a good chance that we were going to lose even more.
For anybody who does not travel on that road on a daily basis, they really need to take a drive on that road before we come back next week to budget. This road is lucky if it's got another 2 or 3 years left in it. It is so pounded, it's not even funny. And you got triaxles and trailer dumps driving up and down this road all day long. There's potholes everywhere. It's an absolute disaster. So I really think if you don't know the road and you haven't been on the road, take a ride down it before our next meeting, because this is a road that is in absolute horrible repair. And it's also one of the busier town roads that we have in our town.
It's in rough shape.
Oh, it's horrible. It's just absolutely horrible.
I will say that one of the things that we did do, we had to do as far as to fill out the initial application for that grant, was to do core samples. So if there's anybody that's unaware of what a core sample is, it's basically of a large drill, stand-mounted drill with a 4 or 6 inch diameter circular auger bit that you drill down through the road surface, and you can pull those cores out and see what that road is made out of. So we had All States Asphalt come in, and we did 4 core samples along the road. All basically, we split it up into quarters, and we just drilled a hole at each quarter. That's what they were looking for, was just an example of what the road was made up of. And the first 3 cores that we did, we didn't return with any actual asphalt. So what you would traditionally see as HMA asphalt, which would be in your driveway, for example, or if you've driven down any of the roads that I've paved since I started here, there's a difference in the material. That wasn't there. But the more interesting part of that was what was there was the first 3 holes. The top layer was about 3/8 of an inch thick of oil and stone, which was a very popular process that the town of Thompson has been using for years. The next layer was about 1.25 inches of what in the paving world would be considered a stripped material. And I'll get back to the stripped material in a second. Under that stripped material was another 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 inch of maybe a couple of layers of oil and stone. And that was it. Underneath that was just sand and gravel. So back to the stripped layer. So that 1.25 inches. So now picture an Oreo cookie. So you have the chocolate flavored cookie on both sides, and you have the cream filling in the center. So that stripped material is basically the cream filling. What it is it was an asphalt based product, whether it was a cold mix or something else. It has aggregate in it. It's like a 3/4 or a 1/2 inch minus size stone, but there's no fines to hold it together. It's stripped out. So whatever was there as a bonding agent, whether it was asphalt and sand that was mixed with the stone, whatever that original material was, is no longer. It's just loose stone that's sandwiched between two cookie layers, which is why you have the pothole problem that you do. And there's no way to fix that. And I've actually researched it to try to figure out what causes it. Nobody can answer that question, because in some of the areas that we did the holes, there wasn't a lot of cracks that was letting water get in between those surfaces. So it's just basically how everything broke down over the years between water, frost, the truck traffic, how things got moved around, and a lot of it probably has to do with the base that's underneath it that's not solid enough to support the road surface. So you know, at this point in time, the only thing you can do with that road is to grind it up and repave it.
Thank you very much.
I know we popped down to this section in the capital improvement plan from, we were in the operating budget. I'm also noticing that it's about 9 o'clock. It did feel, I don't want to necessarily speak on behalf of anyone, but it felt like our questions were starting to quiet down on the operating section of Public Works, which is 3202 in the operating budget. I think, which is why we hopped down to the capital improvement plan while Rich was on the call. And just for the sake of noticing that it's about 9 o'clock, any other questions or comments on the Public Works section of the budget before we adjourn for the evening?
Aaron, I know it's after.
No, no,
nine.
go ahead.
I do have two quick ones.
Yeah.
The first one is with, you know, I just have noticed, I know we're moving from diesel to gas. Rich, thanks for having us at the town garage. We learned a lot. So I would expect some decrease because the cost of gas is less than diesel, but you've got a big drop, and I've been noticing prices at the pump going up. Is that a real, do you feel like that's real? Are we really going to reduce it a net 13,000, 5 up and 18 down combined?
I don't believe that those changes actually have anything to do with the highway department equipment. I think that's going to be more of an Orla thing as far as the contract that she negotiated for us and the pricing for this year.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that is correct. Those rates are purely based on what we've contracted with Dime Oil for fiscal 22. I can send you guys a copy of the list. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but yeah, there was a savings on both line items. Gasoline in the past, our usage was higher than what we had budgeted. So, you know, for example, our budget for the current year is 25,000, but last year was 32. So we're anticipating 25 this year, just because our rate is a little bit less and maybe our usage will be down a bit. But the dollars in here are purely based on what the contracted dollars are and the rates. And I'll email you that information after the meeting.
So these have already been locked in, the rates?
They are locked in, correct.
Great.
So, and this is also one of those things that we receive offset income, not for everything, but there is an item in our local revenue for fuel reimbursement, and that includes fuel reimbursement for from the school, the fire departments, and other entities within the town. But all the expenses come out of this line item.
Thank you. The other was just a request, if we could add to the action list or the homework, if you will. I really feel like we should, this is a big department, and we should get a better handle on where we're going to finish 21. You know,
Okay.
pretty
Rich,
much the line items, you know, the diesel's gone down, everything is either zero or it's gone up. And I think it'd be prudent to go back and look at where we might have overshot in 21, and we can make some reductions. If we haven't, we haven't, but we need to at least, I think, give it a good hard look. And you know, are we spending at the pace that we thought we were in some of these categories?
Yeah, Rich, I can work with Rich on getting that information and getting it updated. We'll take a look at where we are year to date now, a month and a half after these numbers were started, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
No problem.
So it's 9:05.
Well, in the interest of trying to find an Oreo after that discussion, I'll make a motion we adjourn.
Does someone want to second that motion?
I'll second.
So Steve has the motion and Rhonda has the second to adjourn. Steve, all you got to do is go find a glass of milk for that Oreo. All in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed?